Tom Burton here again, author of The Revenue Zone. Welcome back to our second session of the Revenue Zone book overview. In the first session, we covered the first three chapters and really drilled into the why behind the Revenue Zone premise and the problems it addresses. And in this session, we're going to look deeper into chapter 3, which discusses the Revenue Zone matrix, which is a unique and innovative approach for moving prospects from really not knowing anything about you into the revenue zone. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's get right into chapter 3, the Revenue Zone matrix. And as I mentioned, the Revenue Zone matrix is really an innovative, modern alternative to traditional sales and marketing funnels, which have really become out of date and obsolete. So we take a look at the difference between a traditional sales and marketing funnel and the Revenue Zone matrix. Then we get into details as to what is the Revenue Zone matrix. And basically the big idea is that you're moving prospects from the lower left-hand corner of the matrix into the revenue zone. And that is done as they ascend on two axes. So the first axis is the y-axis, and this relates to your product or service, and the prospect moving from awareness and then into interest, and then finally into demand or excitement for your product or service. On the x-axis, it's more related to your company. So they're moving from knowing maybe just a little bit about your company to liking and trusting your company. And obviously, when you get to the revenue zone, the goal is to have that demand and that certain level of trust with the company. But then once we understand the basics of the revenue zone, we have to look at what actually stands between that lower left-hand corner and getting prospects to the revenue zone. And the first thing is what we call the anonymous zone. And this is an area where prospects more and more want to be totally anonymous. They want to be incognito. They want to do their own research. They don't want to have to deal with a sales representative or a salesperson. They want to do more things on their own. And so there's certain attributes and characteristics of what the prospect is doing in that anonymous zone. Then we go into the second layer, which is called the engagement zone. And this may or may not occur, but at this point, the prospect is actually willing to engage with your sales organization or talk to somebody in the business. Again, this may or may not take place depending upon your business and your product or service. And then finally, we talk about what actually occurs to get somebody from the revenue zone to a paying customer, and what are some additional criteria that you need to be aware of and look out for. As we end the chapter, we talk about how you can define your own revenue zone. And again, what I mean by that is, what are the things that your prospect would need to understand and believe about your product in order for them to be in a place where they're willing to consider spending money with your business. So we go through an exercise and a couple of examples that you work this out for your own business. Finally, we talk a little bit more about the genesis of the Revenue Zone matrix and some of the research that we've done to create that. And then we end off with a chapter summary and some discussion questions. And in the next chapter, we'll move into the yellow brick road, which is the process that you take your prospect from that lower left-hand corner, moving them through the anonymous zone, through the engagement zone, into the revenue zone. But more on that later. Okay, so that's been a quick overview of chapter 3 and the Revenue Zone matrix. In the next session, we're going to go into the yellow brick road, which are the tools that you use to move your prospect from that lower left-hand corner of the Revenue Zone matrix into the revenue zone. We'll see you then.